Welcome to our channel. Today, we bring you news that weighs heavy on the heart. Some truly remarkable people have recently left this world. In this video, we will share their stories, their legacy, their final chapters. As a sign of remembrance and in support of their memory, please subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your simple action can help others hear their stories and keep their memory alive. We won't delay any longer. Let's begin this tribute to those we've lost. On April 28, 2025, in Asheville, North Carolina, the world bid farewell to Caroline May Fletcher, a revered American poet, essayist, and cultural activist whose voice reshaped the American literary landscape. She passed away peacefully in her mountain cabin, the same home where she had written her first collection of poetry more than 4 decades earlier. Caroline was born on November 2, 1949, in Birmingham, Alabama, at the height of the Jim Crow era. Her father, a Baptist minister, and her mother, a schoolteacher, raised Caroline and her 2 brothers with an unshakable belief in dignity, education, and the power of storytelling. From an early age, Caroline witnessed the brutal contradictions of her world. Faith preached on Sundays, cruelty practiced on Mondays. These experiences planted the seeds of her relentless quest for truth. When she was 12 years old, Caroline survived a church bombing that killed 4 of her schoolmates, an event that would echo throughout her life and work. She later wrote, "I was born once in my mother's arms. I was born again under crumbling stone." Determined to turn her grief into action, Caroline earned a scholarship to Spelman College, where she majored in English literature. At Spelman, under the mentorship of the legendary Dr. Helen Booker, Caroline discovered the strength of her own voice, one that was both fiercely political and achingly lyrical. She later completed her graduate studies at Howard University, where her thesis, The Anatomy of Silence, explored how suppressed trauma manifests in Black American poetry. Her first poetry collection, Ashes on Sunday, published in 1976, was a searing meditation on racial violence, love, and faith. It received the National Book Award the following year, making Caroline one of the youngest recipients ever. Critics called her work a burning cathedral of memory and prophecy. In the 1980s, Caroline broke barriers again by establishing the Southern Writers Collective, the first national platform dedicated exclusively to elevating marginalized voices from the American South. The collective's inaugural anthology, Whispering Fields, was hailed by the Washington Post as a thunderclap that rearranged the American literary sky. Throughout her career, she received numerous accolades, including, in 1987, the United States awarded her the Presidential Medal of Freedom for transforming personal tragedy into national healing through literature. In 2002, she was inducted into the American Academy of Arts and Letters for reshaping poetic form to carry the unspoken histories of a people. But Caroline's life was not without hardship. In 1983, after a highly publicized falling out with a major publishing house over censorship of her politically charged essays, she withdrew from public life for several years. During this period, she lived simply in Asheville, teaching poetry workshops to incarcerated women and homeless youth. Her personal life was marked by both deep love and deep sorrow. Caroline married historian Samuel Fletcher in 1978. They shared nearly 20 years together before Samuel's death from cancer in 1997. The couple had 1 daughter, Naomi, a human rights lawyer. Caroline often described her daughter as my second sunrise. At home, Caroline was an ardent gardener, a lover of bluegrass music, and a baker of legendary blackberry pies. She kept hundreds of handwritten journals, often quoting from them in her later works. Friends recalled how she would often begin dinner conversations with a soft question. Where does it hurt today? Her public persona, the stoic, fiery voice at rallies and poetry readings, stood in contrast to her private tenderness and profound humility. She rarely spoke of her awards, preferring to celebrate the successes of her students and ments. Among her most enduring quotes were, "Hope is not a light, it is the slow stitching of wounds. Write not because you are fearless, write because you are finally too tired to be afraid. Home is not where you were born, it is where you choose to heal." Caroline's final years were dedicated to mentoring young writers through the Free Verse Foundation, which she co-founded in 2015. Despite being diagnosed with congestive heart failure in 2022, she continued to teach, write, and host intimate poetry circles at her home. Her final interview, recorded 6 weeks before her passing, captured her essence. Sitting on her front porch, her voice low but steady, she said, "I have lived in poems longer than I lived in houses. I am ready to go home." She passed away at dawn, as mist rolled down the Blue Ridge Mountains, with her daughter holding her hand, and a favorite line from her own poem Returnings whispered back to her. "We are never really gone. We are simply folded back into the earth's old songs." Caroline May Fletcher left behind not just memories, but an entire era embodied in her writings, ideas, and students. On April 28, 2025, in Portland, Oregon, the world lost Benjamin Clark Rowe, a visionary American architect, urban planner, and advocate for sustainable living. He passed away peacefully at his coastal retreat, in the same town where he first sketched the dream of reimagining America's cities. Benjamin was born on March 12, 1946, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Raised in a modest household, he was the eldest of 3 children. His father worked long hours in a steel mill, while his mother, a homemaker with a love for wildflowers and watercolor painting, taught him to find beauty in simplicity. Growing up during the social upheavals of the 50s and 60s, Benjamin witnessed the fraying of urban communities firsthand: abandoned neighborhoods, polluted rivers, and displaced families. These images, he later said, etched a lifelong yearning to rebuild not just structures but hopes. After graduating from public high school, Benjamin attended the University of Michigan on a scholarship, majoring in architecture. There, under the mentorship of Professor Margaret Iverson, a pioneer in eco-centric urban design, he developed an enduring belief that cities should serve people, not corporations. His master's thesis, Cities of the Breathable Future, proposed integrating nature directly into urban planning, a radical notion at the time. In 1974, Benjamin founded his own firm, Rowe Collaborative Design. His early projects emphasized communal green spaces, affordable housing that didn't feel oppressive, and pedestrian-centric cityscapes. His breakthrough came with the Lincoln Meadows project, completed in 1980, which transformed a derelict industrial site into a self-sustaining eco-village. For this achievement, he received the National Urban Innovation Award from the American Institute of Architects in 1981. Benjamin was a visionary but also a fighter. In the late 80s, he clashed with city officials and powerful developers when he refused to compromise on sustainable building codes. His insistence cost him major contracts and led to a very public legal battle, but it earned him lasting respect as a man who never traded principles for profit. In 2005, he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Arts and Humanities for redefining American urban living through bold, compassionate design. The award not only elevated his status, but brought national attention to green architecture at a time when climate issues were becoming impossible to ignore. Privately, Benjamin was introspective, a man more comfortable with pencil sketches than podiums. He married historian and activist Eleanor Price in 1978, and together they raised 2 sons, Jacob, a documentary filmmaker, and Matthew, a teacher. Their marriage, while often tested by Benjamin's relentless work schedule, endured through mutual respect and shared ideals. Eleanor once described him as a man who built cities during the day and dreamed gardens at night. At home, Benjamin loved woodworking, gardening, and baking rustic breads. He kept notebooks full of handwritten haikus and often ended the day by playing the cello, not expertly, but with heartfelt sincerity. Though reserved in public, he was known among friends for his dry humor and tender wisdom. He mentored dozens of young architects, many of whom went on to shape sustainable architecture movements across the globe. His Freeform Studio initiative, launched in 2010, provided full scholarships to students from underprivileged backgrounds, many of whom became award-winning designers themselves. Benjamin once said, "A building should never shout louder than the people living inside it. Compromise is the death of imagination. And in every brick, plant a dream." In his final years, Benjamin battled Parkinson's disease, but remained mentally vibrant. He continued sketching, corresponding with students, and offering quiet advice from his sunlit studio overlooking the Pacific. His last public appearance was at the groundbreaking of the Jefferson Urban Renewal Park in Seattle, a project based largely on his early eco-centric philosophies. He sat wrapped in a blue woolen scarf, smiling as children ran through the newly planted gardens. His final words to his family, whispered on his last night, were, "Tell them to keep building, but softer and kinder." Benjamin Clark Rowe left behind not just memories, but an entire era embodied in his writings, ideas, and students. Amelia Isabel Euphemia Rose Clark was born on the 23rd of October, 1986, in the Hammersmith district of London, England. She entered the world as the youngest child of Peter Roderick Rick Clark, a theater sound engineer hailing from Wolverhampton, and Jennifer Susan Jenny Dodd Clark, a businesswoman who would later rise to become vice president for marketing at a global management consultancy firm and director of the Anima Foundation, a charity devoted to supporting young people in Ghana. From her earliest moments, Amelia found herself cradled between her parents' complementary passions: her father's deep love for the mechanics of live performance and his unwavering belief in the magic of storytelling, and her mother's steadfast drive for excellence, discipline, and generosity of spirit. In the Clark household, creativity was celebrated at the dinner table, where evenings often included impromptu sing-alongs at the upright piano, and her parents encouraged all three of their children to dream boldly, even as they faced the ordinary trials of modern family life. Amelia's formative years unfolded first in the heart of London and, not long after her birth, in Oxfordshire, where she attended the Rye St. Anthony School in Headington, and later the Venerable St. Edward's School in Oxford, from which she departed in 2005. Although these institutions were renowned for their academic rigor and storied traditions, Amelia did not always feel she fit the mold of a posh boarding school pupil. She often described herself as an outsider among privilege. Yet it was precisely this sense of standing apart that awakened in her a determination to carve out a unique path. At the tender age of 3, a single visit to a West End production of Showboat ignited a fascination with the stage that would never abate. She would later recount how watching performers transform beneath the glare of footlights first convinced her that she belonged to the world of make-believe. Her mother, recognizing her daughter's spark, enrolled her in weekend drama workshops at the local community center, where Amelia learned the fundamentals of voice projection and simple choreography long before she learned to drive. On Saturdays, she and her older brother, Bennett, rummaged through scraps of fabric left over from charity sewing circles to fashion rudimentary costumes, staging productions for neighbors and anyone who would pause at their front door threshold. These backyard performances became the playground of her imagination. Children in capes chased imaginary dragons while Amelia, clutching a broomstick scepter, assumed the mantle of an enthusiastic queen. As Emilia moved into her early school years, her artistic pursuits only deepened. In the corridors of St. Edward's, she joined both the choir and the theatrical society, where she tackled scenes ranging from comedic farce to scenes by Shakespeare. Her classmates remember her as a whirlwind of energy, practicing monologues in the quad between lessons on algebra and Latin, her bright purple backpack trailing behind as she raced to rehearsals. Teachers took note of her exceptional ability to memorize lines, her chameleon-like adaptability in channeling the emotions of characters far removed from her own experience, and her fearlessness in standing before an audience of peers. Yet even as applause became a kind of nourishment, she continued to excel academically, earning top marks in English literature and history, and demonstrating that her gifts extended beyond the footlights. In her mid-teens, Emilia's ambitions began to encounter the rigid gatekeepers of professional theater. Undeterred by rejection, she auditioned for a coveted spot in the National Youth Theater, only to miss the cut by a single line in one reading. The experience, though disheartening, steeled her resolve. She vowed to refine her craft until no director could turn her away. Meanwhile, she auditioned for school productions of classic musicals, singing soprano solos in Carousel, and dancing in intricate numbers for The Sound of Music, testing the boundaries of her vocal range and her ability to meld physicality with emotion. Upon graduating from St. Edward's in 2005, Emilia set her sights on the most prestigious acting academies in Britain. She applied to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, and the Guildhall School of Music and Drama, only to face rejection from each. While many might have retreated in the face of such setbacks, Emilia embraced a season of exploration. She worked part-time at a West End cafe, saved her modest wages, and traveled briefly through mainland Europe, observing street performers in Rome and pantomime troupes in Paris. Yet it was in London that her heart remained tethered, and within months she enrolled at Drama Centre London, where she would embark on a 3-year course of intense training in the methods of Stanislavski, Chekhov, and practical aesthetics. The rigorous curriculum at Drama Centre presented challenges, both physical and emotional. Early mornings began with voice and movement classes, designed to strengthen her instrument and sharpen her awareness of spatial dynamics. Afternoons were devoted to text analysis, breaking down the motivations of characters with exacting precision, and evenings were often consumed by rehearsals for scene study workshops, where feedback was as honest as it was unrelenting. She struggled at first with self-criticism and the relentless scrutiny of peers, but gradually discovered that vulnerability was her greatest asset. By surrendering to the moment, she could access the raw depths of truth that elevate performance from mere imitation to genuine human connection. While still a student, Emilia began to secure small professional opportunities. In 2009, shortly after her graduation, she made her television debut with a guest appearance in the BBC One medical soap opera Doctors, stepping into the world of camera work with aplomb despite her sheltered background in stage theater. Not long after, she filmed a modest science fiction feature called Triassic Attack, which, though panned by critics, afforded her crucial on-set experience and taught her to match her movements to complex green screen effects. Each of these early roles bolstered her confidence and reinforced the lesson that even the smallest part could be a school for mastery. Her first brush with global recognition came in the spring of 2010, when she auditioned for a new fantasy series based on a set of best-selling novels by George R.R. Martin. In a small audition room in London, she was asked to portray Daenerys Targaryen, an exiled princess whose journey would carry her from oppressed exile to queen of a broken land. Drawing upon the resilience she had cultivated on the family poultry farm, where she had once worked alongside her grandparents, and the empathy she had honed through years of embodying diverse characters. She delivered a reading that was both regal and vulnerable. The producers, sensing a rare alchemy, offered her the part on the spot. Game of Thrones premiered on HBO in April of 2011, and Emilia's performance as Daenerys sparked immediate curiosity among viewers. Within weeks of the debut, fans across continents began to speculate about her fate, crafting online tributes to her Mother of Dragons persona and celebrating her capacity to convey both steely authority and touching compassion. Though the series' expansive ensemble meant she shared the spotlight with many, her portrayal stood out as a lighthouse of humanity amid sprawling epic battles. By the end of the first season, she had not only won the allegiance of millions, but had also demonstrated an instinct for balancing soft intensity with the command of a born leader. Yet even as praise poured in, Emilia remained acutely aware that her journey was only beginning. She continued to attend acting workshops between shoots, studied the historical roots of her character's arc, and sought mentorship from seasoned colleagues, whose collective wisdom she viewed as a wellspring of inspiration. In those early seasons, her artistry matured in public, each new episode revealing a deeper layer of her talent and a more daring aspect of her craft. By the time Game of Thrones concluded its second season, Emilia Clarke had firmly captured the attention of a global audience. Her portrayal had inspired countless fan letters, driven her to the top of ones-to-watch lists in industry publications, and earned her the respect of critics who saw in her a rare combination of natural charisma and disciplined technique. Yet despite the burgeoning acclaim, the pinnacle of her fame was still over the horizon. Major film roles, stage triumphs in the West End and on Broadway, and awards recognition all lay ahead, awaiting the moment when her artistry would claim its full measure of renown. In those formative years, Emilia Clarke's journey from a curious child in Oxfordshire to a queen of a fantastical realm had already left an indelible mark on the cultural landscape. She had proved that perseverance in the face of rejection, an unquenchable thirst for learning, and a willingness to lay bare one's vulnerabilities were the hallmarks of a truly remarkable performer. Her life and contributions to the art of storytelling had become a beacon of inspiration, ensuring that her achievements would be remembered with respect and gratitude long after the final credits rolled.